figure it out. So another mass shooting happened on the weekend. This one was apparently in an LGBTQIA plus two-spirit whatever club. And immediately, within a few hours, President Biden called for an assault weapons ban. This stuff is so predictable. I haven't looked into the details of the case because it's going to be the same as all the others. And when the snowflakes hear that, they're like, yeah, it's the same as all the others. Some guy came in with a assault rifle, a weapon of war, and shot all these people, and that's why we got to get rid of guns. It's like, okay, so that was obviously a tragedy. Assuming all this is true, like I said, I haven't looked into it. We don't know what the motive. The funny part is, in this public statement from the White House, look at the very first sentence. While no motive in this attack is yet clear, we know that LGBTQ blah 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 community has been subjected to horrific hate violence in recent years. Gun violence continues to have a devastating and particular impact on these marginalized communities across our nation, and threats of violence are increasing. We saw it 6 years ago in Orlando, which, by the way, if you look up the Orlando club shooting, look that up on BitChute, and you can see some of the people who were allegedly shot in that interaction goofing around, jumping up and down on their supposed bullet wounds and laughing with their friends after the shooting. Just saying, smelled a little fishy. A lot of the evidence that came out of the Orlando shooting was rather fishy. And as Harley in chat pointed out, it's likely same as all the others that FBI interference played some kind of role in this situation happening, because honestly, that's just been the trend. In the 20, 30 mass shootings in the last 10-ish years, we continue to find evidence that the shooters had some kind of exposure to FBI informants, whether they were sitting in chat rooms with them or they were intentionally exposed to them like through outside meetings, meeting for coffee, and they basically are grooming them into this violent behavior. Discord channels and whatnot, 4chan. Yeah. So this is likely another. We should do some more research on this today, actually. I want to know more facts about this case. But what immediately jumped out to me was, in the very first sentence, no motive in this attack is known. Pretty interesting. We don't even know that this was a hate crime in the sense of specifically targeting gay people. That's unclear. Assuming it is true, it doesn't really have anything to do with guns. He could have went in there with a bomb. He could have went in there with a knife. It's the individual themselves that are accountable for committing the crime. And we can get into gun statistics and all that stuff. It's a little tiresome to do so because most of the people I'm talking to already know. But when you look at the number of defensive gun uses per year versus the number of offensive, meaning homicides or shootings, it's the ratio isn't even close. I forgot the numbers, but let's just do a quick Google search. Defensive gun use per year. Oh man. Let's see how bad the ADL and such are trying to suppress this information. This is interesting. This stuff has changed since the last time I looked at it. According to almost every U.S. major study, Americans use their firearms defensively between 500,000 and 3 million times each year. According to Wikipedia, applying different adjustments, other social scientists suggest between 250,000 to 370,000 per year. But then a couple links up, there are 7 times as many gun crimes as there are instances of defensive gun uses. And they say it's only 70,000. So this is part of the information disaster, the chaotic nature of the internet, that either side can basically pay researchers to skew whatever data they want. You saw this with COVID. And then they can publish articles with skewed data saying, look at my data. You have to believe now that I've showed you the data that guns are bad. Or likewise, that guns are good. I'm not saying that all pro-gun data is 100% factual either. This is why it takes critical thinking. Like, you have to actually step back and say, okay, let's not make this political. Let's make this a real life scenario and say, I'm in my home with my wife and my 3 kids. And outside, I see a car of criminals get out of their car and start approaching my house, and I see them holding guns. Are you going to be happier that you have guns in your house to defend yourself? Or are you going to say, well, they're going to be at my front door in 30 seconds, but I can call the police, and the police they'll protect me. They'll be here in 30 seconds. Do you really think that's a realistic scenario? I don't. I'd much rather have my own firearms, my own ability to defend myself at any moment's time, wherever I am, whether that's in my home, whether I'm going to the damn grocery store, going to the park, any of these things. And this is why there's an amendment in our Constitution for this. It's the Second Amendment, and it's been there since America was founded for a very, very intentional reason. And it's not specifically against criminals that we need to defend ourselves against. Our founding fathers knew that potentially we have to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. So it's multi-purpose. And people with critical thinking skills understand this. Like, there's enough violence in the world just due to human nature, whether it's criminal. You know, you're talking about socioeconomic factors. So you're being robbed at gunpoint, not because of corruption, but because this guy doesn't have a job and doesn't want to get a job for whatever reason, or can't get a job, but he has to feed his family. So now he's holding you up at gunpoint. Okay, those are socioeconomic things. And there's always going to be that. Whenever you have a marginalized class of people living in poverty, they're going to have to commit crimes. Not have to, but they're going to commit crimes. The same way when you decriminalize drugs and people start suffering more and more from addiction because there's no consequence, there's no legal consequence to taking drugs and abusing them. People wreck their lives through addiction. They're not able to create an income anymore. And so they have to resort to crime, and they do so with firearms. And so we're creating criminals, violent criminals. We have a mental health crisis. And simultaneous to all of this, the government is trying to tell you the safest way we can go about fixing all of this is by taking away your guns. Not going to happen. Not in my America. Not while I'm voting. Not while me and Harley are voting. We get it. Not while the Texans are still around. We got to keep Texas strong. Can't allow it to go purple. I got the same mission when I get to Alabama. Can't allow it to go purple. And you do bring up a great point. 60% of all gun death is suicide. And the thing is they try to roll those deaths into the gun death category, when that's very, very misleading, because that's not violence against other people. That's not involuntary violence. That's voluntary self-inflicted violence. That is tragic, obviously. But that's talking about a mental health crisis situation. And I do believe it is true that individuals who are suicidal, who have access to a gun, probably do empirically have a higher likelihood to actually complete suicide than those who only have access to pills or knives or whatever other lethal means. I think it probably is true. It gives them a faster, less thought through. So if they're highly impulsive and volatile, emotionally unstable people, the presence of guns probably does result in more suicides. But guess what, liberals? Guess what, snowflakes? That's part of doing business. That's part of the business agreement to being able to protect ourselves from criminals and from a tyrannical government. That's the trade-off. The liberals think that there's just no trade-off here, that if you just get rid of guns, everything will be better everywhere. It fixes all the death, the gun suicides, and it fixes the hostile violent crimes. It fixes the mass shootings. Like, no. All these criminals, by the way, who are committing these crimes, do you think before they commit the crime, they stop and go, is it legal if I use a gun when I commit this crime? Because I don't want to get in trouble if the gun that I use to kill somebody, if it's illegal. to have that gun. So let me stop and check what the law is on that. Just use 4 brain cells to really have a conversation out loud about the inane nature of gun control. People have to be red-pilled on that, because every single time one of these shootings plays out, whether it's organic because some individual is having a mental health crisis, or it's intentionally directed by the FBI to create these kind of narratives where, oh my God, look how violent things are, we got to get your guns. That way, you're just a pushover when we actually want to take control. You got to be awake and aware enough to not let that happen. So, yeah, no surprise that the Biden administration immediately jumped on the most recent shooting to try to take your guns. Not surprising at all. I think that's going to do it, guys. It's a Monday morning. It's 9 a.m., which means I got to jump over to my 9 to 5 career, my real life, my ability to bring home the bacon for my dog. So, thanks for joining me this morning. This was a quick and effective episode. Hopefully, Donald Trump will actually come back to Twitter. I really want to see that, largely just for entertainment value and the emotional meltdown of liberals everywhere. All right, have a great Monday, you guys.